Hello everybody, this is Krishna here. So today's topic is Python for DevOps. Hope you guys are aware of what is actually DevOps means. Okay, so DevOps, when we say DevOps means developer operations. So from developer, they have picked out the dev term, and operation, they have picked out the ops term. So it is both developer and operations. And most of the DevOps role we see in today's world, they are like, mostly it's all combined. There's no borderline saying DevOps will only do that. DevOps is you can consider it like a superhero. They can do anything from testing to deployment to development, everything they are able to do. So the line at which you can cut out and say DevOps will do only that, it's not there. Whereas when you take a developer, you can say developer will do only coding, or maximum he can do on call on the system he built it. But DevOps is not kind of that role. So one good thing about DevOps is you will get chance to work on anything you want, whether it could be development, testing, deployment, operations, end to end. You have full control. And you are the guys who are working on the DevOps. They are the guys like in some companies they are called as SREs. I mean, the people who are very good in DevOps convert as SREs. In most of the company I see like Google, Amazon, and in some companies they're like treated very well because they know their system end to end more than a developer. So it is like, I would say, it's like a mixed role. There's no borderline defined. Good part is you get chance to learn most of the things which even developer will not have a chance. Whereas the disadvantage, I would say, since there is no borderline, any kind of work can come to you. You cannot say this is not my cup of tea. So it like any kind. So that's being the biggest problem, because there is no scope well defined for the DevOps is what I feel. That's been the same even for the operations teams also in some companies. So that's on the con side. But if you see the advantage side, you get chance to learn on multiple things which no other role in companies actually have got. So we will talk about how Python is useful in DevOps role today. So let's start with that. So this is our agenda. We will first talk about what is Python. Then we will talk about what is actually DevOps and what kind of things come into DevOps role. Then we will understand why we have to use Python for DevOps. Then we will look at how can we use Python for DevOps, and if time permits, we will look at least two of the technologies people use now and then in DevOps today, like one on cloud computing or other on some automation testing, something like that. We will try it out. So what is Python? So Python these days become like jack of all kind of thing. Anything people are using Python, as simple as that. But if you look at why people have to learn Python is majorly there are two reasons. One, it is simple, and another is compared to developer productivity is very high in Python compared to other languages. Some of the reasons also listed here. This diagram, if you look at, it says it's easy to learn. Oops, it support oops, and it's having huge library. So when you compare with other language, you might have a similar question that why the other language is not that case. So first, let's talk about this. As you know, Python is introduced by Guido van Rossum, scientist. He's a applied mathematician. So he introduced this language. Right now, I think he's in Google. And the name Python is not because some snake or whatever. So it is like he used to watch a comedy circus program. That comedy circus program name is Monty Python. So from there he inspired and put that name. And it is his part-time project. Like that he started. He is a very good C programmer, where he find out that a lot of things he want, it's not there in C. So he started building a language in C, and that's where it came as Python finally, by just picking out the name from an episode. So why it is easy if you look at. So one thing it is easy is when they say easy to learn, it's not because the actual scientists who introduced feel it is easy. It is because when you compare with other language, it is very easier. So when I say, if you look at Java programming language, even for hello world, you have to write that public static void main, and you have to define a class, then write a method inside, then write a system.out.println. All that, at least 4 lines you have to invest. Whereas in Python, if you want to write it, you can just write a print statement and get it done. So the number of lines of code you write will be easier, will be lesser compared to other languages. Other than that, the way you implement things also, it is not just like we are trading off because of just number of the lines of code. Even though lines of code are lesser, at the same time, performance wise, if you see, it works better than other languages. So that's what they mean by easy to learn in comparison with other languages. When it says open source, it simply means that this language you can download. This language, whatever you are talking about Python, it is written in C, and it is available in the internet as a GitHub, and you can download and suggest some workarounds, or say Okay, this is something you may need to introduce. Like for example, until 3.9, you do not have a switch statement in Python. So somebody like you might have suggested a switch statement in Python, and that's where now in 3.1, the switch statement in Python is coming up. So all these new features you can talk about by looking at the Python original code, all that you can do. You can just search in internet like Python code. You will get that GitHub link. It's as simple as that. That's what I mean by open source. That means our code is open in the internet. When they say large standard library, and one more thing is Python is free. You don't need to pay. It's not like a Windows, you have to pay some money and get that. And one more thing is Python has got huge library. When I say huge library, you just call out any domain, whether you say automation testing, you say cloud computing, you say GitHub APIs, you say continuous development tools, whatever, anything you call out, you will find at least 1 or 2 libraries minimum. It has got that much extensive library compared to any other language. That's one good part of it, because when you have libraries, to just call out for people who are pretty beginners here, library are simply a reusable programs. You can call it as a reusable programs where you can use in your program and make use of it. If they assume that if they are not there, the trouble you are going to have is you need to write that. Like let's say for example, you want to crawl a website or you want to parse a website, and you don't have a library, something like HTML library. One of the popular HTML library is Beautiful Soap. Let's say that is not there. Then what you have to do, you have to manually download that HTML page, write code so that it can parse it properly, all that headache you need to do. Whereas given that Beautiful Soap is there, using that library, you can easily get it done. So somebody has written for you. That's what I mean by library. It's a reusable kind of entities which you can use in multiple programs. Now coming to OOPS, OOPS simply means object-oriented programming system. Different languages are different with different styles. Like, the styles are called as paradigms in programming world. So, Python supports both procedural programming as well as object-oriented programming also. And understand one thing, people who are working in object-oriented programming, they actually work on developing systems which are highly maintainable and scalable. If you look at Amazon, Flipkart, Google, all their systems which are going to live for, let's say, 10-15 years, they are all built using these object-oriented programming languages. So that's the good part of this object-oriented programming languages. Any language which is object-oriented, understand that people use object-oriented when the complexity of the project is high and when they want to scale the code over a period of time, not just for today. If you want some quick and dirty solutions, you can use some simple shell script or whatever. Since Python also support, that means it gives you an opportunity to build highly available and maintainable systems. That's more about this. Now, what are the features of Python? Like I said, we called about simplicity. Is functional programming better than OOPS? It depends. It's like if you call out, functional programming is more of, you actually write things to act in a more simplified manner, just like a mathematical equation, f of x equal to a plus by, something like that. You will write in a more simplified manner. But if you look at the durability or longevity of the code which is more readable makes more sense than the code which is shorter, because shorter code only the people who are experts in that can be able to understand. So that way I would say it is all preference. If you want to just get the code done and that project is only going to live for, let's say, just 1 year, not more than that, it's just like, or 1 day project or 1 day task or 1 month task kind of, after that nobody is going to worry about it, you can develop in functional programming. But object-oriented programming systems are generally used for projects which are going to stay for 10 years, 15 years and all. Amazon is built in object-oriented programming language called Java, and it is still there from day one to till now. It is still there. Even though Python is coming, Python is still there, but they are still on Java. So it's all about you have to look at your use case. Are you going to work on a project which is going to be complex and need to be maintained for 10-15 years? Then you have to think about object-oriented programming. Otherwise, any style is okay. Functional programming, procedural programming, doesn't matter. So simplicity we already called. You write less code and you achieve faster performance. That's the best part of it. Now coming to this guy, open source, we already talked about it. Like we already spoke about it. It's something you can freely see their code, whatever it is written, and you can just suggest any feature or workarounds or some bugs if they have, you can suggest the problems. And one more thing is Python is free. You don't need to pay. You can just download and use it. Portability. Okay, portability is like, what does it, if you see mobile number portability, like you can switch from one state to another and you can still keep your same phone number. You can just change your provider from one network provider, mobile network provider, to another mobile network provider. That's called mobile number portability. Similarly here, instead of mobile network, just replace them with operating system. You can switch your code, the same code, whatever it is written in Unix, you can copy that code and execute in Windows also. That is called portability here. Okay, that's called source code portability, I would call out, because your source code need not be changed even though when your OS changes. That's what I mean by portability. So the reason why they are showing phones is the same reason. It's actually in similar with whatever the mobile number portability we hear on the day-to-day basis. Now coming to embedded and extensible. So when I say embeddable, in Python, you can even write C code. There are certain areas where you need to call C code, because even though Python is very good in a call about, if you really look at what are the disadvantages of Python, the biggest disadvantage is it is not as fast as C programming language, because the language itself is built in C. So it is not as fast as you see a C programming language runs. For real-time programming, yeah, to a good extent, Python is okay, but it will not work at that speed which C can do it. But if at all you want in Python some code where it has to work in real time in fractions of seconds, then you can embed your C code. That is also possible. And you can extend the code if you want. And the other feature, interpreted, there are different ways you can interpret your programming language. Like, you might have heard about compilers, interpreters. So compilers, interpreters are like translators, to convert your source code to a machine code. So now your C programming language, C++ programming language use a translators called compilers, where they convert your source code to executable. Whereas Python, Java, Perl all uses interpreters, including your initial script. That means the language, when it translates your code from source high level to a machine level, it does that line by line. So that line by line kind of execution and compilation is called interpreted languages. And there is a lot of advantages when you do interpreted languages, because you can fix the bug then and there. It is very useful during debugging or development, because you want the bug to not stay until you finish out the entire project. You want the bug to show up as soon as it comes up. So that's where the interpreted languages are very good. Like I said, huge libraries. You can see any stream, anything you pick it up. Python have got huge library. Like for example, this NumPy, Matplotlib, NumPy, Matplotlib are very popular for data science, and scikit-learn for machine learning and all. These all libraries on the data science and ML. These are the populars. Even one more thing is there called pandas. Even that is also one of the popular library for any data science projects or ML. So anything you just call it and you will have something in Python. It's as simple as that. Object orientation, we called about, it's nothing but your object-oriented programming. So that's about the features. Who uses Python? My question is, who not uses Python these days? After Python become popular, this mostly you see everybody, like whoever is working on every project, you see some or other guy will be using Python. And YouTube is completely built in Python. Google search, the spiders, whichever they have built, which crawl your websites, are built in Python. And most of the infrastructure side on Netflix is built in Python. So even Amazon, the SDKs for AWS is built in Python. A lot of things you can count out. Okay, so everywhere you see now or other reason people see Python being available. That's one good thing, because that means you have more opportunities by just learning one language. Okay. Now coming to what is DevOps, we already spoke about what is DevOps. DevOps simply means a developer operation role. It's a mix of developer as well as operations. So when you say operations, it could be your deployment, it could be your maintenance of the product, it could be even testing your product. Everything from end to end, you can take everything. So that's why here we have put a diagram about from planning to monitoring. That means this is your first step, where you plan how to build it, then you code, then you build it, then you test it. After that, you do an integration of the multiple code you have done, then you deploy. And when it is working, operations. When it is working, whatever issues you come, you monitor. All this DevOps can do. There is no one thing you can pick it out and say this is not a DevOps job. So that's being the biggest advantage, is being called as DevOps. Now, why we have to use Python? I mean, it's like you can call it out like, why should I use Python? I want to use some other language also. Yes, you can. But only thing, like you see, based on the features we called about, like I will mention about some of the tools. Like for example, if you take Git, or if you take Selenium, or if you take anything on the cloud side like Splunk and all that, everything has a Python library. So that's one good thing. You can call it out why you need to use Python. You don't need to run for multiple languages to do one thing. You just learn one language, and every other work on DevOps which comes, you can use a Python library to build it. So that's the same thing. This is the same thing they are calling about. For example, here we are saying for everything we have a Python library. That's what they mean here. Now, continuous development. So what does it mean by continuous development? The other name for continuous development is your control management tools, or to be more explicit, it's like source code management tools. So what does actually these source code management tools do? They are actually used to track modifications of your source code repository. They track the history of your code base and helps you to resolve conflicts whenever you merge updates from multiple contributors. And the popular tools available today are Git, Mercurial, Apache Subversion. These are the ones we mentioned. Even more might be there. These are just based on how many people are working on that. So this is your first thing, like you develop the code and all. So it is all life cycle based on from the development to the testing, how we go. That is how it is being arranged. Now coming to continuous integration. So what does it mean by continuous integration? So continuous integration is like when you work on a project, always remember that it is not just one guy will work. There is a set of people going to work on the project. Multiple people work on the project. So when multiple people work on the project, you need a way to integrate all their code and merge into one single project, right? So that's where continuous integration will come. So to just put it out a proper definition, it's just building an automation to integrate all your code changes from multiple contributors into a single software project. That's what they do. And for the tools which are available is Jenkins, Travis CI, and TeamCity. These are the popular ones. Now, let's say you have integrated the code and you have ready to deploy. So before that, you need to do some kind of testing, right? So testing is, we know about testing, right? Testing is more about you are executing some set of automated tests to figure out whether it is working according to the expectations. So what you are doing here is, before even it gets deployed, you are putting some kind of levers to ensure in the software delivery pipeline, is that working as expected before it becomes alive. So that is what you do, and you have multiple ways to test it before even you deploy. Like one is Selenium, which is mostly used for user interface testing. That means anything on browser, you want to test your any browser kind of browser based web pages. In, let's say you worked on a web pages development or web development projects where you want to do some kind of testing on web pages. That's where the Selenium comes in. TestNG or JUnit, or mostly for unit testing, you can use JUnit and all that. So mostly all the testing tools are there in library, there as libraries in Python. Tools for software integration. So tools for software integration are Jenkins, Travis CI, and TeamCity. So these are the tools you have. This is Jenkins, Travis CI, and TeamCity. So now moving on to deployment tools. So deployment tools, where once you validate and you are good to push your code to live, that's where your deployment tools comes in. And for automating all these deployment tools, you have multiple tools like Chef, Docker. Docker is mostly on the container world. Ansible, Vagrant, Puppet. Those are the tools you have for continuous deployment. And for all of this, you have libraries in Python. That means if you want to hit something using Docker, or you want to do some, for example, Ansible has a support both in Python, Java, and Docker also have a library in Python. So everything you pick it out, any of these tools which are a separate tools for each of the requirement, like continuous development, continuous integration, you have a library written in Python also, which you can use it. Now coming to continuous monitoring tool. So now let's say you have deployed it. So if you see how we have done it, first we have spoke about source control management tools, where you build something, develop something. After developing, when your multiple people are working on it, you get across the continuous integration, where the code has to be integrated. Once it is integrated, before going to live, it has to be tested. That's where your continuous testing tools comes in. Once it is tested, you need to deploy it. That's where your continuous deployment tools comes in. Once you deploy, somebody has to monitor. That's where this comes in. So this is like a maintenance phase where you will be monitoring using tools like Nagios, Stack, New Relic, and Splunk to monitor how things are working. Is it working as expected or not? You can put some alarms and trigger it out, all that. Okay, let's move on. So as you see, DevOps covers most of the areas, almost everything. I would say the end-to-end development lifecycle. That's why these guys are famous. It's very hard to learn, I do understand. That's why, to be honest, what you can do is you can pick out any areas like monitoring, deployment, monitoring, testing, and all, and master on that. Other things you can learn over a period of time. Okay, then Ansible. Ansible is like a readable automation tool. And like I said, this is one of the deployment tool, and they have support both in Python also. So you can write Python code in Ansible also. So that is also possible. Both it is part of the Ansible you can write, and other than that, you have a library to directly do the things as well. And how libraries will help? They actually will help you to save the time, because you don't need to search for multiple things to get the work done. How to use Python for DevOps? Like I said, for Git also, for every other development lifecycle from end to end, whatever we call, may it be integration, deployment, source code management, testing, monitoring, for everything, you can find a Python library. And GitHub, for GitHub, this is the library you have. Git API is the library, you can pick it out to do anything on the GitHub. And for CI environment, continuous integration, if you want to do, generally what people used to do before Python is they used to write the code in bash scripting, the shell scripting, or PowerShell, which is Windows scripting language. Now with Python, what would happen when you write the code in shell scripting is you do not have more control on the code. But with scripting languages like Python, you have more control and you can deal with things much faster comparatively. So that's one good thing it avoids, because one reason is Python have this one. You have OS and subprocess libraries also. So OS library is particularly for operating system, and subprocess library is something where if you want to fork a process inside your program, that means from your program you want to execute a Windows command or Unix command, that's where your subprocess comes in. So not just that, networking, anything environment specific also you can get it. Networking, you have a different library. And Boto and Google's DDK, these are your cloud computing libraries. That means anything you want to do on the cloud. Let's say, for example, you want to deal on AWS, you want to work on AWS services using Python, you have this SDK called Boto3. We'll see if time permits, I'll just show you a small demo on how you can use it. And for Google, you have something called Google Cloud Storage. That is the SDK available. So SDK are basically software development kits. You can consider it like an API interfaces using which you can talk to that particular cloud computing environments or cloud computing infrastructure. Like in this case, Boto3. Using these Boto3 APIs, you can talk to AWS cloud infrastructure, whereas using this, you can talk to your Google. Similarly, you might have something for Microsoft Azure as well. And for testing, Python have got a lot. I mean, like I think these days one or another is popular called robotic framework. And from long time, the Selenium is one guy who is popular and is leading the show. I think today it is like these days in testing, at least the robotic framework came into picture. And with for database, if you want to connect to database and do something, you have different libraries again. For MySQL, there's a library for connecting to MySQL, which is called MySQL, the same name. And for Postgres and MongoDB also, you have ways to connect it. And if developer operations, if you want to develop modules and all, like you have other libraries called Fabric, FabTools, and Kusan. And for deployment on PaaS, which is like platform as a service, you have a library called Cloud Foundry and Client. So mostly what we are trying to convey in the last 3-4 slides is you pick out any one area and we have one library in Python. So there is not even one area you can say this we don't have. I'll just show you a demo on how to do something using this automation testing, the Selenium. I'll show you a small demo. So this test1.py, I will explain what it will do. So what this guy will do is he will actually open a website called python.org, which you can see he opened it automatically. And he opens, and in this button, you're seeing this, right? That Python, it's disabled, I mean, or it's dark. So it automatically types the Python, click on the search button, and whatever the results are there, it will pick out. So what exactly it does automatically without user intervention is it forks this python.org website. And once it forks, it actually clears this text box button, types Python here. That is what I was showing you. And after typing, the program even clicks it. You see after typing how it becomes the same thing is what you have seen, right? It types Python, it clicks on go button. And after clicking go button, you got some results, right? Python documentation by version, download and all. All this is what it automatically downloads. You can see that Python documentation by version automatically downloaded. So what we have done here, is we have done a UI automation or something on browser, any website where you're running on a browser and you want to automate the testing. What we can do is we can use Selenium, and that is what I have used here. I have used a Selenium WebDriver here. And why it is needed? So for example, let's take a real-time application. Let's say you're working on something called, working on some email related kind of companies where they have designed an email website, just like how you have Yahoo Mail and Gmail. And they want to see the email, while email creation, let's say 1,000 users at the same time they are creating email, will their website be down or able to take the load? How do you test it? If you are a tester and you've been asked to do that, or if you are a DevOps guy, you've been asked to do that, you cannot just at the same time, you cannot just put 100 emails, 100 passwords at the same time on that particular web page and test it, right? That's not possible. So how to do it? So that is called UI testing on the browser. So anything on browser, if you want to do these kind of testing on the web browsers, any web pages on the web browser, that's where the Selenium comes into picture. Selenium is actually a general concept, but Selenium has got a library in Python which helps you to do this kind of UI testing automation. That's what the Selenium will do. And you have a lot of use cases. I've just shown you the small demo. So one thing you can see that how I'm able to do it. So I like just explain this small program, what I have done. It's pretty simple the way they have written. And if you just type Selenium in Python, you will get a full good documentation about it also. So what I have done, I'll just show you. Let me open this in Notepad. Maybe that would be more visible. Oh, it tries to open like this. Okay, I don't need this. Okay, it tries to invoke it again because I double click on it. So now one thing for using Selenium, what you need to do is you need to use something called web drivers. For example, if you're working on, so this is the program I have written. So you see Selenium import web driver. This is the code. So what we have done here is you need to be having the driver, Chrome driver. Like let's say, for example, you want to talk to Chrome, you need to have the Chrome driver that you need to install. And this is where my Chrome driver is. So I'm saying import the web driver from it. And I'm saying this is my Chrome driver path where my Chrome driver is available. And I'm saying, okay, just open, set this path for the Chrome. Similarly, for Firefox, you have to download the Firefox driver. Then after that, I'm saying this driver should wait for 30 seconds minimum and it should maximize. So this is the page I'm asking it to open, python.org. That's why it is opened. After opening it, it will wait for 30 seconds for the page to load. That is what I have mentioned here. And it will maximize it. That's what I have mentioned here. And after that, it will just search for a text field. And text field, you have something called ID search field. This is, in WebDriver, Selenium WebDriver, you have different ways you can pick a particular web element or HTML element. So this I'm picking based on the ID. So I'm picking out the ID from there. And after picking out ID, I'm just clearing out that particular text. And then I'm sending this Python text on that. Similarly, you can do for Google search also. Then after that, I'm detecting what is the go button. The go button next to it is there, right? What is the ID over that? And after detecting, I'm just doing a click there. That's all. And after that, I'll get results. I know where the results is. I'm picking out that XML path and that results I'm showing to you. And finally, I'm quitting the driver. As simple as that. So whatever we have walked through, the same thing we are doing here. Okay. So now let's talk about one more area in the DevOps. Like if you remember, here we talk about some Google Cloud and all. So this is the Selenium piece, which I have showed you. And this is where we talked about Boto 3 also on the cloud computing. Okay. So this also sometimes people use in the DevOps operation. Like for example, let's say you're working on the cloud side and you join Amazon or somebody. Okay. When you join Amazon or somebody, so the first thing it will come out is like they might have given you a task if you're working on the AWS side to create some n number of users in their AWS account. So how to do that? You can do manually also. Let's say they have given you some 1,000 accounts and they ask you to do it. Now it is reasonably very difficult if you look at it because you have to do manually one by one each account and you have to track of how you are doing it also. So those kind of tasks Boto 3 can help. Even more bigger than that, I'm just telling you one basic use case. So these kind of use cases you can code in Boto 3. And how to do it? Like first you need to install the Boto 3. So this is how you can install Boto 3 in your environment. So I'm just showing you in Colab. So Colab is internet version of Jupyter Notebook, you can say. This is provided by Google and it's an internet version. Over internet you can use. No need to pay anything. All you need to have a Gmail account. If you have, that is enough. Okay, it's still downloading. So once it downloads, that Boto 3 library will be available to us. So meanwhile, let me just open my AWS account. So this is my AWS account, and AWS account 1 year it is free. You can play with all the services by just using the free trial account. And I have created one free trial account. And the use case I am talking about is, let's say, how they manage the user administration. Like you have a lot of users joining to your team, and all their team information and all their team login is maintained using this IAM. Now, when let's say, for example, you're working on the DevOps side and they ask you to create set of users, like here we have only 2. They ask you to create 10 users here, or like that they have given 1,000 accounts and they ask you to do it. Now, how to do using Python? So that's what I'm trying to show up here. So let me show that quickly. Okay, where is this? So I'm just authenticating myself. So I'm doing in Google Drive, so it needs authentication before I download before I get anything, before I want some mini drive. So here you see actually my credentials. In order to contact your AWS and all, you need to have the credentials stored somewhere. So here what I am doing is my credentials is stored in this particular file in INA format, and this is my drive, my Google Drive. So that's where it asked about authentication. So it can check which particular Google Drive you're asking, because I have multiple Gmail accounts. So after that, I have created a session for my particular account. And once it got connected, I was just asking what are the users you have. And you can see this is exactly same as what is this. These 2 is what it is showing up. Okay, I can just see what are the users available now. Now, let's say I want to create a set of users. Like I said, the first use case, I want to create 10 users. So I can simply put a for loop like in Python, and I can call the Boto3 API. The Boto3 has got an API called create user, and that will do for 1 user. So since I'm aware of Python, I know how to do it for 10 users. So I just put a for loop to create it for 10 users. So let me create it. So this will create 10 users on my AWS account, each with name user 1, user 2, like that. So let's refresh this guy. And after refreshing it, you should see 10 users. That is the expectation. See, 10 users automatically created. All the users I have created using my Python script. Using Boto3 and Python, I was able to create it. So like that, if you are maintaining account, let's say for example, for customer service team in your company, and you have to create 1 user for each of them, and you have to do that manually. Let's say 100 users you have to create. It will be very tedious job, believe me. And after that, you have to give credentials to them, and it is that another headache. Rather than that, just like how I showed, you can quickly create it, and you see it happened just in not even a second, right? Just that using Boto3 you are able to hit it, and using Python you are able to code it. That's all. See you all. Thank you.